So this is a week conference, so we have a program prepared and we are on the second day in the afternoon in our first session of the afternoon. So the agenda of the day, if someone can share with me the agenda, we are coming today in the afternoon to talk about gender, and then we will be engaging in a session on put less in, get more miles out. So regulating vehicles efficiency. And this is a very global session prepared for you today. So if you have the time, keep connected. And then after the gender session, we will go to that. Come back to learn more about what we are doing. And tomorrow we are having the experiences from Latin America and Africa. And also we will be talking about energy and adaptation. And on Thursday, everyone is welcome to come at the same time than today to do the right thing for the future, a message from Transport Week community towards the COP on Monday in Baku. So we are very looking forward for you to engage in our sessions. This session is to be translated into Spanish. I'm checking here my notes. Yes. This session is to be translated in Spanish. So para la gente de habla hispana, tenemos traducción. Elijan su idioma para que puedan seguir la sesión. And every afternoon session is translated into Spanish, so you can enjoy from Latin America and the sessions we are providing. So with further introduction, I would like to invite my colleague, Ariadne Baskin, to deliver the session towards gender transformative transport system, leveraging networks for action. Ariadne, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So hello, everybody. Thank you, Andrea. My name is Ariadne Baskin, and I will be leading you through today's session. I'm calling in from Cairo as I'm attending the World Urban Forum. Today's session is called Towards Gender Transformative Transport Systems, Leveraging Networks for Action, and it is hosted by the Global Alliance for Feminist Transport, which I will introduce. But first, to briefly introduce myself, I work for the Transformative Urban Mobility Initiative, where I co-lead Women Mobilize Women, BMZ's flagship initiative on gender equity in transport that works towards building more feminist transport and mobility systems in our cities, and is one of the 3 pillars of the Global Alliance with Women on the Move Asia and Mujeres en Movimiento. The Global Alliance for Feminist Transport is the first global hub on feminist transport and mobility, with the goal of connecting and empowering organizations, networks, and individuals working towards more inclusive, feminine, and feminist transport systems in our cities. We spotlight who through a global expert database. There is no longer an excuse for all-male panels. How through a growing library of research, data, and capacity development tools. And what through best case studies, reports, and other examples that are moving our cities to be more accessible and inclusive for women and girls. I greatly encourage everyone who's joined in today's session to join the online hub. You can find it through this QR code or through a simple online search. If you're an expert yourself, or if you have knowledge on the topic, to submit your knowledge and to add your profile to the list of existing experts. Our knowledge base is expanding by the day. And quickly, once again, here are the functions of the different functions of the online hub, and I greatly encourage you to take a look and join, and we're honored to be hosting this session today. But for the meat of today's session, so feminist and gender transformative urban mobility systems require women as leaders and active participants in planning and policy decisions. This requires actively challenging the systematic gender gap in the planning and design of our transport and mobility networks. To do this, more women are needed in the transport workforce, from planning and policy making to operations and management. Attracting, training, and retaining women would not only make the sector more inclusive, but also alleviate the workforce shortage. Today, we will look at why are women underrepresented in the sector? How can we increase women's representation in each stage of the employment life cycle? And what are some best practices from around the world? To do this, we will look deeper into the different life cycles of the employment and leadership aspects of the transport workplace through 3 pillars: attraction and recruitment of women, which will be presented by La Rolita with GIZ Peru facilitating; HR policies and practices through Safetipin and Women on the Move facilitating; and leadership and career progression with GIZ Uganda and Women Mobilize Women facilitating. We will then go into a 25-minute breakout session on the 3 pillars presented. Our speakers today will be Luis Alejandro Camelo Barragan from La Rolita, Safetipin by Rithvika Rajiv, and Lisa Hofheinz from GIZ Uganda. And now to start the session off, I would like to introduce a poll so that we can interactively go to understand the status quo together. So for the first question, approximately what percentage of transportation and storage workers worldwide are women? If you could go ahead and put what you think is the correct answer. Okay, so I see that the majority of you think that women represent up to 22%. This is incorrect. In fact, the correct answer is 12% of transport workers worldwide are women. And in fact, in some countries, this is only in the single percentiles. In India, with 5% in many Asian countries, for instance. And within that, women comprise only 5% of workers in land transport, 10% in water transport, and 21% in logistics. The next question. What percentage of women hold senior and middle management positions in public transport operators and authorities? And this percentage is from a global study commissioned by the European Investment Bank to the International Association of Public Transport, UITP, on public transport operators and authorities representing an overall workforce of about 600,000 people. So please submit what you think the correct answer is. I'll wait for another 30 seconds. We have 40 responses. Please submit your response so we get an overall understanding. Okay, so the correct answer to this is actually 26%. So in the study, 26% of women hold senior middle and management positions. And the proportion of women to note within the workforce decreases with seniority, indicating, as this session shows, the presence of barriers to career progression. Okay, so a more diverse transport workforce and more gender-responsive transport planning can unlock wider economic and social development. Unsafe, inaccessible transport limits engagement in the economy by approximately what percentage? And this is from a World Bank poll in 2023. Please submit your answers. Let's get at least 50 responses. Take a stab at it. Okay, we're stuck at 42. So wrong again. 16.5% is the answer. So in the poll commissioned by the World Bank and the International Labour Organization, it was found that unsafe and inaccessible transport limits women's engagement in the economy by nearly 17%. And to add to that, a McKinsey report found that in a full potential scenario in which women play an identical role to men, 28 trillion could be added to the global GDP. So what could happen to our economies if women had equal opportunity and access to men? These numbers are very striking. Next question. Okay. So more women in the transport workforce, particularly at the managerial or leadership level, is linked to higher environmental performance. A recent global study of 2,300 publicly listed companies of some of the most male-dominated sectors showed that companies with greater gender diversity are approximately what percentage more likely to reduce energy consumption. So this is looking at the nexus of decarbonization and gender. And this was done by FCB and Analytics in 2022. Please go back to the question 4. Karina, it says we jumped a question. Can you see question 4 on your... Okay, well, the answer to question 4, because it skipped to question 5, is in fact 60%. So more women in the workforce has so far been documented to have a 60% increase in energy efficiency. And this report dug into the results deeper and found that 39% with more women in the workforce to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and up to 46% more likely to reduce water use. So now our final question, which is on the screen, is that the international transport, so ensuring safe and secure working conditions is central to increasing women's participation in the sector. Many workforces are designed without taking into account women's personal security and hygiene needs. The International Transport Workers Federation, the ITF, surveyed female rail workers across 56 countries. Approximately what percentage felt an acute fear of daily gender-based violence? GBV and harassment. Please submit your choice. Okay, so we got a correct answer here. It looks like we got a correct answer here. So the correct answer is over 50% of workers reported to having experienced gender-based violence on a near daily basis in their workforce. The numbers, if you dig deeper, say that 44% are perpetuated by their colleagues, which provides motivation to supporting more dignified workplaces and sexual harassment trainings within workplaces, 35% by managers, and 13% by customers. So those numbers are very interesting. And I encourage you, if you're interested in these numbers and reports, to contact us and we'll provide you the surveys from where it is from. So those are the poll questions. I hope that laid the basis for an understanding of the status quo, the gender gap in transport is significant across the globe. As we saw, only 12% of the global workforce are women, and I'm excited now to look at how we break those barriers to women entering the sector by showcasing 3 examples. And let me just share my screen. So the first example will look at the attraction and recruitment of women. And I would ask if Luis Alejandro Camelo Barragan would like to start presenting. I'll mute myself.
Okay. Hi everyone. In this case, Luis Alejandro Carmelo will talk about the attraction and recruitment. He's from La Rolita, and La Rolita is a leader in this case in Latin America, like a pioneer in this case in which women can feel an equal situation of work with men. And I give the pass to Luis Alejandro.
Thanks. First of all, hey everyone. The women in La Rolita plays an essential role in the operation and contribute the sustainable mobility of Bogota. The women who enter in this sector demonstrate their capacity. The objective of La Rolita is encouraging women to take up relevant studies and purpose career opportunities in transport and strengthening women's recruitment, particularly into technical roles. Next, please. So back, another, please. Okay. The challenge, the positive of challenge, please. Okay. Okay, no, is this the positive? Okay. Loretta have to challenge with the women of in these roles, low levels of female enrollment in technical and system educations, gender stereotypes playing the role discovering girls from person transport careers, uh, engaged gender norms can hinder women's progress in the recruitment process. Um, who we are? La Rolita is the first public transport operator with 100 electric feet and a commitment gender equity. It is the sixth entity attached to the mobility sector of Bogota. In a, the institutional strategy is based on three transversal axes such as corporate social responsibility, efficient management, and sustainability. The sustainable transport model, the operator manages the key aspects are highlighted such as firstly, the social impact is supported by the SDG 3, 5, 8, and 11. I mean the development of talent, decent employment, diversity, equity, and inclusion with the organization. The economic impact is supported by the SDG 9, 10, 16, and 17. In the diversity income, invest in technology, ethical culture, and compliance in the action, the overall efficient. And third, the environmental impact demonstrate the commitment of the conservation of natural resources, recruiting of reduction of CO2. Uh, La Rolita has hired close 600 people, of women 285 are women who works as operators. Most of the mothers who has household and who regularly work and paid unpaid jobs perform driving before joining to the company. A high percent of the works live in the Ciudad Bolivar, Bosa, Kenny, and the municipality of Swatch. This group of women, migrants of the LGBTIQ plus diverse population in the company. La Rolita is a company with a focus on social inclusion, learning what is the necessary for our operators. Mothers who are headholds can perform the work and bus drivers without neglecting the needs of the house. La Rolita defines inclusion is a fundamental process that creates a work environment in which our workers feel valued, respect, and accepted for who they are. And this is it. La Rolita promotes and facilitates a space with awareness so that each person has the same opportunities and actively participate, contribute with the ideas, included in the decision-making process, and the impact on the well-being to the others. It's, it has been a great challenge because public transport was traditionally being a male-dominated sector. The challenge in the education for the women are eco-driving. It's a program that the fields help the women become operators, inviting all women who, regardless their experience, wanted to drive buses to the public transport and service in the city. The research together with different district entities, the IBD and C40, managed to bring together 415 women who received economic support, specialized training in driving, psychology and support, and resources to recategorize the designs with the objective to become a zonal bus operators. Another program available to the woman Rolotas is the breakfast feed room. Any woman who breakfast can use this room to have her baby's milk and once her working days is over. Take it home and coordinate the field and nutrition of this crucial food in the first year of life. And we have a three to training and skills development for the women's professional driving, appropriate to take advanced technology, stretching, maintenance, and knowledge in the buses. Next, please. In terms of the environment, we have stopped emitting 2 million of CO2 tanks to the feet of 195 electric buses. We save water through the recirculation plant, and we have recycling process. In only 2 years of operation, La Rolita has demonstrated that it's economically, social, and environmentally sustainable company. And the climate action is promoted through the different solutions and methods that have been implemented in the La Rolita. We have 72 urban vegetative gardens that have been working with the community, where we have one vegetable garden planted in the backyard by children of the community, and any uh, plants in different house of the community. He lives between the project of La Rolita.
Thank you so much, Luis, Alejandro. So Luis just explained to us the first pillar of how we break down barriers for women to enter the sector, which looks at the attraction and recruitment of women. So he detailed a bit how La Rolita is providing dignified working environment and incentives for women to take up jobs and careers with them. I forgot to add that after the next two pillars, I will open up the room for questions. So if you do have questions for Luis, Alejandro, please write them in the chat and I'll come to them after our next two presentations. So next up, Annalie, would you like to introduce Rolita?
Yes, so I'm Annelie, I'm an advisor on transport and climate change at GIZ, and I'm co-leading Women on the Move, which is a network for women professionals working in the transport sector in Asia. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you Ritvika Rajiv, who is a Senior Program Associate at Safetipin, and her work will examine the intersection of gender and mobility with a focus on creating inclusive, safe, accessible, and affordable public transport systems. So Ritvika, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Annalie, and thank you for having me here as well. So I'm Ritvika and I'm from Safetipin. Shall I share my screen or shall we continue like this? Is that a yes to sharing my screen? Okay. Thank you. So I'm representing Safetipin, and we are a social impact organization, and we work with the government, with civil society, with research institutions, with women's group, with a larger aim towards building gender responsive, inclusive, safe, equitable public spaces and mobility systems. So we primarily do this through two methods. One is that we have a technology platform through which we produce evidence-based data, and the other is through research. So as we already saw earlier in the poll, women in the transport workforce globally is only around 17%. And out of these, most of the women are primarily concentrated in lower paying roles, including cleaning, administration, etc. Whereas you find that men are dominating the driving or the managerial positions. So, and if you look at, for example, the gig economy, you will find that only about 10% of women are there globally. And in countries like India, this reduces to about 1%. And again, as we saw in the polls earlier, that there are very few women at the higher levels of decision making, which is rather a shame because they tend to make more sustainable choices. And again, women in the service roles, like front-facing roles, they can actually improve a lot of service quality, especially when you're dealing with passengers with diverse needs. So there is, so if you look at it, there's a lot of bias against women in the transport sector. There's a lot of gender stereotypes, and this is primarily more when you look at front-facing roles, especially not only from colleagues, but also from passengers as well. So if you look at the gig economy, you'll find that a lot of women drivers, they complain about, having high cancellation rates or having poor ratings, and this impacts their earnings negatively as well. So if we, So if we look at the major challenges that women face in the sector, I'm just going to outline the majority of them. The first is, of course, safety and the gender-based violence. So women, there's a lot of threat to their physical safety, especially, because they're in the roles that are front-facing, when they are driving, because of interacting with a lot of unfamiliar individuals. And this fear is actually not at all unfounded, because a lot of reports have suggested that they face a high level of aggressive behavior from customers and colleagues. And again, we have seen that the transport sector is a very male-dominated sector. So there's a lot of attitude and behavioral issues that they face from their male co-workers, and this creates a little bit of negative working environment for women. And when we look at the transport sector as a whole, you'll find that the systems, the policies, the planning all generally revolve around men. The needs and requirements of women are very rarely taken into consideration. The next is that of time poverty. So we all know that there's a lot of socioeconomic expectations and norms and rules around women, that they should prioritize caregiving over paid work. I think in Asian countries, women spend about 4.1 hours more on care work than men. And globally, I think this is around 2.8 hours. So this makes it very difficult for them to sort of commit to the demanding hours that that jobs in transportation demand. And again, there is the issue of poor infrastructure and working conditions. The biggest, I think, would be the access to sanitary facilities, especially when women are menstruating. There's sometimes a cost when women are perhaps in driving roles. Every time they have to go and find a washroom, they have to take multiple trips. There's a small cost component as well. So there's this issue of having just a place to have a break, to manage their personal needs, to rest. And this issue is further exacerbated because women also face harassment while they are resting as well. I think there's a study that says that about 1 in 6 women gig workers in Pakistan and Bangladesh have faced harassment while resting. And the last is, of course, that there's a lack of necessary skills. This can be technical skills and soft skills, so that, and this is really required so that women are well equipped to handle any challenges that they encounter while working. So now we're just going to take a quick look at what are the good policies and practices for women in the transport workplace. So if you look at women's safety, one is, of course, having comprehensive and actively implemented transport support systems. By this, I mean that there should be dedicated helplines, there should be rapid response teams, and also immediate human assistance during emergencies. For example, we have platforms such as Nanmayatri in India, so where they actually provide, where women receive help from male drivers and on-ground support in case of any emergencies such as breakdowns, etc. So I think it's really also important that platforms move away from using maybe SOS-based responses and go for real human support instead. And another issue is that, to be honest, in many societies, there's a sort of a notion that there's a when women, they complain about harassment, there's an issue that there's a sort of stigma attached to their reputation that they have been harassed. So there's a need for reporting systems to be anonymous. And then further, sometimes these reporting systems tend to be really long drawn and complicated, which makes women very unwilling to report. So it's also very important to have strong action against perpetrators. This can be, for example, suspension of misbehaving customers. For example, I think Zomato, Uber, Ola, and maybe PickMe in Sri Lanka have such policies. And then there is a safety-first approach. So this is for women on ride-hailing platforms. And this can be something as simple as gender-segregated rides. So when a woman driver is looking for passengers, maybe she has the option to select a woman passenger, or to at least know whether she's picking up male or a female passenger, so she can make an informed choice. And maybe they can also have physical measures such as having dividers in cabs. And maybe they can also have a system where they know the number of passengers they are picking up, so that in case they do not wish to have a passenger sitting on the driver's side, they can have that option. They can have that option as well. Then if you look at gender responsive infrastructure such as sanitation, so if you look at the images below, one is a lactation room, which is in the Kochi metro station in Kerala, India. So this is open not only to the women passengers, but also women working in the Kochi metro, as well as anyone on the street. The second image is from is a woman driver from Asad. So Asad is a CSO based in India, and they pioneered women joining the Delhi Transport Corporation as drivers. So they also actually worked with the designers of the buses to ensure that the seat is of an appropriate height for women drivers as well. And the third image is actually an image of a toilet, which from in Delhi, which we took when we conducted a safety and analysis of the infrastructure. So you can see that this is a testimonial from a woman bus conductor who's saying that there is no place to rest. So how do we even take care of our safety? How do we rest? So how do we even manage to work? So then when we look at gender sensitive policies, one would be inclusive leave policies, which are important because in many places, for example, getting pregnant means losing your job. So there should be strong maternity policies in place. Then in terms of gender responsive technology, for example, if you're looking at ride-hailing platforms, you might have adjust your algorithms to respond to women's needs, because as I mentioned earlier, most of these have a strong gender bias towards men. So for example, if they can have assignments closer to their home, or in case assignment for a delivery comes up and both a woman and a male and a female driver are within proximity, then the technology can select the female driver. And this actually has a large impact on their pay as well, because when we talk about the issue with time poverty, for example, as women spend a lot of time doing care work, especially when they are in a job like in the gig economy where everything is very flexible, they might end up earning less. So then if you have technologies that will support women to be able to work more, or even reduce the commission on the side of the platforms, this can actually create an equity and an equal playing field for women. And of course, I don't think we can all emphasize enough on collecting gender disaggregated data to actually understand what are the gender disparities and to take action towards creating a more equitable workforce. It's also very important for to develop their skills. For example, in terms of technical skills, not only repairing their own vehicles in case of any breakdown, but also if they can, for example, if ride-hailing platforms can help women identify what are the high demand areas, and they help them understand the data to sort of maximize their earnings, that can really help. And soft skills are equally important, especially in such roles, because, conflict resolution, negotiation, how to de-escalate situations, how to react when facing gender-based violence or harassment, set up guidelines on what to do and how to do. So it's also important for companies to make sure that their employees are aware of different policies that are in place as well. And the third, of course, is self-defense. It's also very important to incorporate women's voices, especially women in decision making. This means that, helping women climb up the ladder and, targeting and creating policies that actually aid women to reach the decision making roles, and policies against discrimination, for example, and ensuring that a certain level of management positions are actually held by women. It's also important to ensure that there is that women are able to give feedback, so that this can be used to shape their policies and services and environment. For example, Zomato in India have taken steps to ensure that women workers can they're given a questionnaire and they can fill out regarding the safety and security at different locations, so that if certain locations are demarcated as unsafe by a number of delivery partners, these are often blocked by the platform. And in many situations, the laws regarding sexual harassment may not be very clear. So in such cases, a code of conduct can be adopted, which sets out minimum standards of behavior and actions. And we have seen this done by Flown Initiative in Nakaru, where they have set up a framework that helps sort of ensure that there is safety, inclusivity, and efficiency within the transportation network. And it's also very important to ensure that there is training and sensitization for both male and female employees This can also include for male employees, sensitization to sort of dispel notions about gender norms, understand the challenges that women face, and also to understand, to identify, prevent, and address instances of sexual harassment against women. So then it's also useful to have mentoring and peer-to-peer support networks. I think platforms such as the Global Alliance for Feminist Transport that was mentioned earlier, then Women on the Move Asia, they're all really important to ensure that there is personal and professional development, and also that that women in the transport sector get mentorship, they get ongoing support, they are able to share their experiences and engage with other women in the sector as well. Similarly, there are also women in transport databases such as the TUAS database, which can also help amplify the voices of women within the sector. And finally, I would say that it's very important to have public awareness campaigns that can sort of normalize having women in transport. This is not only for within transport companies, but also which is addressed towards the public as well. And thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's abundantly clear that employers need to put into place robust policies and practices that contribute towards attractive and dignified workplaces that women would want to work in and that women can thrive in. And I also particularly enjoyed the pictures that you presented from your work in India and the different case studies you pointed to. Women Mobilize Women is actually supporting the Flown Initiative in their effort to develop Kenya's first public transport code of conduct to set underlining manifesto of what public transport authority in Kenya should look and behave like. And to find out more on that, you can look on our website. Now I'm going to share my screen again and introduce Lisa Hofheinz from GIZ.
Yes, can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Ari. I'm going to keep it very short. Thank you so much for the two previous presentations. I found them extremely insightful, and they also touched on a lot of things that are relevant for this topic already. Yeah, my name is Lisa Hofheinz. I work with GIZ in Uganda. I work closely with the Ministry of Energy, which is also very much connected to obviously the entire transport and electrifying transport topic in this country. And while I think the challenges and recommendations that were mentioned in these first two pillars are extremely relevant also for the topic of career career building and leadership, there are a couple of very specific additional ones that I will mention. But I think this presentation will now just re-emphasize the holistic and comprehensive approach that we need for all three topics, and especially the topic of building a career or even like getting into a leadership role in this sector. Next slide, please. So how this all started in Uganda and how we ended up touching the different levels in this sector, speaking of technical skilling of women in the sector, as well as managerial staff, as well as actually the political level, is by starting a pilot project on skilling for the e-motorcycle sector. That was in 2022. And we were that's when the e-mobility sector in Uganda kicked off. We had a lot of momentum, and we were obviously trying to see how we can actively include women in the sector and make sure that women are part of the green transition, especially in Uganda. What we initially tried, and I'm mentioning that because it very much relates to the approach we took. We initially tried to train generally youth, but also 50% women as e-motorcycle riders, as e-motorcycle technicians, and as managerial staff. We, in the course of the project, found out very quickly that for multiple reasons, not all of that necessarily makes sense. So we very much focused on continuing to train women in technicians' roles or technical roles. Whether women should ride motorcycles in Uganda, could ride motorcycles in Uganda is a bit of a complex and long topic, so I'll just leave that aside. But we realized for multiple reasons that didn't really seem to make sense, and it didn't really work with the sector or with the cultural background in the country. So we focused in the second phase of this project on skilling female technicians alongside male technicians. That had proven to be a successful approach in the first project, because we obviously want allies and we want men to be training next to women, seeing that there is absolutely no issue with female technicians. Touching on the gender stereotypes and cultural aspects that have been mentioned before. We also, in the implementation of this project, leveraged the expertise from an energy project that I'm working with, as well as an employment promotion for women project, as I have worked with training technicians in the past, and my colleague has done a lot in regards to female employment. So we tried to leverage both of that. Can you go back to the last slide? Sorry. Exactly. So then we looked at a suitable private sector partner, leveraging what exactly has just been mentioned. We were looking for a company that already has some of these HR policies in place, that was open to looking at gender sensitive measures, and someone that we can just go along with and that we didn't have to necessarily build up too much. So we were really focusing on the successes or the things that we realized that worked in the first project phase. We were very much lucky that the sector in general currently has a big momentum and also emphasizes the role of women a lot, which helped us to leverage. And I do think that is a very, very strong argument that we have going for the successes, or that is that's one of the major points that made this project successful, is being able to include role models on multiple levels. As technicians, we had female trainers, we have a lot of female technicians now. We could very much leverage the success of these women, as well as female leaders, both in middle management. For example, in the recently launched Uganda E-Mobility Association, we have a lot of women on these medium management roles. And especially within the energy sector, we have women in most of the top management roles. So we have 2 female energy ministers, we have a female permanent secretary, and also a lot of the agencies within the energy sector are run by women in Uganda. So that is something that I think was extremely helpful in the broader context. And also GIZ's cooperation with especially the ministries here was really helpful to leverage the momentum, I think, and loop women in. Next slide. Yeah, so that's basically what I'm aiming at. I think the multi-level approach that we have leveraged here in Uganda has been extremely helpful. We, like I said, focused on technicians after we realized that we don't see ourselves in the position of necessarily, I mean, that is also an approach, but not an approach that we wanted to take. We didn't want to especially focus on creating or getting more women into riding motorcycles, because that is not really an electrifying issue. That is more of a cultural norm. We didn't want to address that too much. We wanted to see where is least resistance that we can build on to get women into positions where they can build their career and actually, build towards a management role. So we have technicians, and there again, we build on role models. We have managers, which actually we realized don't face that much resistance, which we were happy to see. And we have policymakers in Uganda that re-emphasize this very positive approach. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so maybe let me summarize quickly on what the main points are that maybe we could add to the aspect of career advancing and leadership. Apart from the aspects that were mentioned in the first two pillars, I would say that gender stereotypes are definitely still very relevant in this context, going along with the social norms for the labor that is expected also in the Ugandan context in the household for women. These we try to address by sensitive measures on all three levels, for technicians, managers, and policymakers. Then leadership training, networking, and sensitization are key aspects that we focused on. And that's why I also mentioned multiple times that the cooperation between all three levels, as well as the networking, has been extremely efficient for all of us. I mean, I'm basically part of this system, of this ecosystem in Uganda, right? I'm like on one level or another in a managerial position. And so being part of this has also very much benefited me. And I've seen it benefit a lot of technicians. We've all benefited from policymakers. They have benefited from us, giving them the bottom-up information from the actual technical challenges that we face. So role models are very, very interesting and very important. And the upcoming aspect or the reoccurring aspects of having training measures and capacity development measures for all of these women in their respective field to continuously advance their position. I think these are the aspects that I would add on top of the recommendations from the other two presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for detailing how you really need a holistic and multi-level approach to increase women in leadership positions, how you promote and provide professional development opportunities, and how you also need advocates to support them in rising up, such as other women in leadership positions and people who encourage in policymaking positions. I would now like to open up the floor for 5 minutes for any questions, if you would like to raise your hand or put it in the chat. And then we will go to 3 breakout rooms where you will be put with one of us on the 3 pillars presented, and we will look and deep dive into what different things you need to happen according to the 3 pillars to move women forward in the sector. So do we have any questions? Okay, well, there's one question for you, Lisa. Did you come across in Uganda that sensitizing could already start from schools or colleges?
Yes, that is a very good question and a very good general point. We do work with the TVET sector in Uganda, and that is something that I think we have already gained experience in the last years. And we faced a lot of challenges, especially in rural Uganda, how to get women enrolled in, for example, basic electrician trainings, these kind of things. So we've tried multiple approaches, which I definitely think were helpful for this transport-related project. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share the experiences there we made, and we definitely included some of these measures, but we also realized that we still have to additionally focus in this specific electric mobility project. We had to focus on people that are already in the workplace, right? So we trained a lot of people, we upscaled a lot of people that basically were already out of the formal TVET sector. So we still needed to find a good starting point to have this conversation with them. But that will always just be a supplementary measure to addressing this topic in the TVET system and in schools in general. But that is such a broad field that is nothing that GIZ alone can cover, obviously.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I hope that answered your question, Neha. We have time for one more question. I don't see one in the chat. Would someone like to raise their hand? The one question in the chat is a very big question, which we could answer at another point.
I can just quickly respond to how many technicians were trained and how climate finance plays in. So in the first phase of this project, we have trained 150 people. But I think the big achievement of the project really was that we developed 3 training curricula for the system and for the sector, I mean, which are publicly available. And this is now the curricula that we are trying to get accredited with the Directorate for Industrial Training in Uganda, and which is being used by all private sector companies and hopefully soon to be included in the official TVET schools. In the second phase of the project, we're training 300 people and revising the training curricula based on the most recent needs in the private sector. All of that, again, is publicly available. I'm very happy to share all of that. And climate finance, I mean, generally, I think climate finance is a great catalyst for the e-mobility ecosystem in general and should be leveraged. Not specifically sure, to be honest, how we could use that for women. But we have had these discussions with all the partners that we work with, because of course everyone's looking for this kind of money, which to up and to scale up their measures, especially gender measures. So it's something that's in the room, it's being discussed. In Uganda, the sector is just starting, so we're looking at a lot of startups. And for them, I mean, you need to reach a specific scale to actually access climate finance, right? You need to demonstrate that you are actually avoiding emissions to a certain scale to be interesting for climate finance.
Thank you, Lisa. So now we're going to go, it was a very comprehensive answer. And if you want to find out more, I encourage you to reach out to the panelists. Their emails will be shared.